Okay, yeah, let's get into it.
Totally
wrong facts you probably still
wrong
believe.
facts that people still believe. The flat earth fallacy.
Fuck.
Okay, we all know that the earth is flat, right? I'm obviously joking, and I'll save the tinfoil hat for another day. But what I'm referring to isn't flat earthers in the modern day, but it's the flat...
Yo, we got somebody at work. Hey, Reese, you know exactly who I'm talking about. We got somebody at work who genuinely believes the earth is flat. Okay, and if that is the truth, whatever, you cannot convince me.
flat earth belief that was held by people in the Middle Ages, specifically around the time when Christopher Columbus took his infamous journey across the ocean. Obviously, during the Middle Ages, it was believed that the earth was flat and that if you were to sail too far in the wrong way in the ocean...
Okay, but explain how people don't fall off if it was flat. There's got to be an end, right? There's got to be an ending point if it's flat. How do you not fall off? And not only that, but a lunar eclipse. Don't you see the shadow of the fucking sun? You see the entire shadow. He said Earth isn't fucking flat. Yeah, I agree, but
you could literally fall off the
no,
earth.
these are literally false facts.
And it was for this reason that Christopher Columbus wanted to prove these people wrong and risked his life sailing the opposite way to India to prove that the earth was round and not flat, going against the primary belief at that time. Now, what if I told you that everything you just heard about that situation is not true whatsoever? It is actually a rather popular misconception. Let me explain. While Christopher Columbus did sail across the ocean to prove a point, the point he was not trying to prove was that the earth wasn't flat. The point he was trying to prove was that...
Yeah, but didn't Christopher Columbus carrying a bunch of disease, though? Didn't he come in with a bunch of HIV and a bunch of drugs and, like, kill out half the population he encountered? Wasn't that his whole genuine mission, though?
The earth wasn't as big as some people suspected. It is historical fact that not only Christopher Columbus, but basically any educated individual during the 1400s knew that the earth wasn't flat and was in fact round. And this knowledge dates back far before Christopher Columbus or even the Middle Ages entirely. Some of the first recorded suggestions that the earth may be round actually date all the way back to the 6th century BC with the Greek philosopher Pythagoras. And later in the 4th century BC, Aristotle even agreed and supported this theory, citing one personal observation that he noticed every time he traveled southward, southern constellations would be higher in the sky. But this, of course, wasn't the only evidence we had of the Earth being round. During this time, we also had recorded observations of lunar eclipses showing a round shadow.
Literally, what did I just say? A lunar eclipse. It shows the shadow of the Earth, bro.
On the moon from Earth.
Real iPhone. No prices.
Look, I brought that on myself.
Fast.
I could make $1 million. I'm not buying YouTube Premium just for the simple fact that it takes 4 seconds to skip that. It's taking me longer to explain this than it does to skip it.
Numerous eyewitness accounts of mountains seemingly growing out of the ground on the horizon as you approach them, or seeing a ship seemingly submerge into the water as it sails into the ocean. My point is that we've had a lot of evidence that the Earth is round, and it dates back far, like way before the Middle Ages and even way before the Common Era. But just to further validate this point, in the 3rd century BC, it wasn't just a suggestion that the Earth may be round. At this point, it was basically a known fact to anybody in the educated community. And philosophers and scientists were not so much focused on the shape of the Earth, but the size of the Earth. And potentially, most impressively, at this time, the head librarian of the Library of Alexandria, Eratosthenes, was able to estimate the circumference of the Earth with 99% accuracy. And while that estimate wasn't proven to be extremely accurate...
Okay, but what did he use to fact check himself? If ChatGPT wasn't around yet, how did he know he was correct?
Until much later, it still goes to show that there was a lot of evidence suggesting that not only was the world not flat very long ago, but that people were well aware that the Earth was not flat. Which brings us back to our original point. No, Christopher Columbus did not think that he was potentially going to fall off the world, and nobody who was educated or even slightly paying attention thought that either. And while seemingly flat earthers have existed in every era of history, they're as ridiculous today as they...
What started that? What started this whole Earth is flat era, bro? What started that?
were back in 1492. Now, this next wrong fact I want to mention isn't even a wrong fact at all. It's honestly just a shocking truth. Did you know that basically all cloud storage services use your files to train AI and sell your data? That is, besides today's...
Yeah, Mark Zuckerberg's been doing that since literally 2013. Nothing has changed since. The Russians been buying our shit since literally 2013. During the last election, I don't know how many people got signed out of Facebook. Let's be real.
Video sponsor, Proton Drive. Proton is trusted by over 100 million people worldwide, and Proton Drive specifically offers end-to-end encrypted files and photo storage. Proton offers privacy by default on all of their products. And what that means is that Proton protects your personal information and personal files from being shared with advertisers or being used to train
Is this an ad?
AI or
This is literally a sponsor pre-vid, bro.
other third party.
Not pre-vid, mid-vid.
I use Proton Drive because it allows me to store, collaborate, and share Trusty Bro assets with my team super easily, just like other services, but with more privacy and
Yeah, you're
security. It's got a
killing
video on time. So if you are looking for a secure, like I mentioned earlier, Columbus didn't believe the mainstream theory of how big the Earth was. And his goal with the support from Queen Elizabeth was not to prove that the Earth was round or not to see what was beyond the edge of the Earth, but to potentially find a more quick and efficient trade route between Europe and Asia to optimize international trade. And of course, we all know what happened from there on out, and well, here we are. So yeah, the suggestions from people in the Middle Ages believing the Earth was flat are actually modern misinformation, with this myth being brought to the mainstream in the 1700s and 1800s. And unfortunately today, stick figures on the internet still need to undo all of this misinformation. But in case you wanted a real misconception that was believed during the Middle Ages, I'll give you one. A lot of people during this time suspected that the sun rotated around the Earth. That was until Nicholas Copernicus came around and suggested that maybe the Earth rotated around our sun. And he did so not with observable evidence, but with a mathematical model that was not only hard to argue, but was eventually proven true: the Mount Everest myth. If learning that the Earth is actually round blew your mind, then this is about to shatter it. Everybody and their grandmother's grandmother knows that Mount Everest is by far the tallest mountain in the entire world. But what if I told you that actually wasn't the case? Now, before you think I'm lying, let me just confirm that yes, Mount Everest has the highest peak above sea level.
Yo, Reese, can I get a beer count? How many beers deep are you right now?
In the entire world. The peak of Mount Everest is 29,029 feet above sea level, and it is confirmed the tallest peak around the globe. But what if I told you that there was another mountain that was technically taller? If you're confused, don't worry, because I'm about to make it all make sense. Introducing Mauna Kea, a dormant volcano on the island of Hawaii. Looking at this mountain, it's relatively impressive, but only stands at roughly 13,800 feet above sea level, meaning that it's tall, but it's obviously not taller than Mount Everest. That is, unless you measured from base to peak. And this is where this technicality comes into play, because Mauna Kea is kind of like an iceberg, and there's a lot more than meets the eye. Specifically, the 20,000 feet of mountain that exists under the ocean. That's right, unlike Mount Everest, the base of Mauna Kea is submerged deep underwater. And it's for that reason that while from base to tip, it is technically 4,000 feet taller than Mount Everest due to the fact that...
Yeah, still wouldn't climb it. You would never catch me climbing nothing taller than dude, a stair ladder. You would never catch me on a ladder. Maybe it's a fat guy thing. Holy shit, you would never catch me on a ladder.
Most of it is actually underwater. It will unfortunately never claim the title of tallest mountain simply because it has a pretty significant disadvantage of...
Could you imagine me on a ladder, dude? On top heavy running.
Existing in an ocean. It's almost like you were 6'5" and you went to a tall guy competition. But in order to compete, you had to stand in a 5-inch hole, meaning that you were only 6 foot. And while the person you were competing was standing on flat ground and was only 6'1" tall, well, guess what? This other guy is technically taller than you, even if you have a few inches underground. But I have a feeling this...
Hey, what do you mean by that?
This one might be a bit controversial, so let me know what you think. Does anything below sea level not count, even if it is part of the mountain's base? Or is Mauna Kea an underdog that deserves more attention? Because, realistically, base to tip, it is the tallest mountain in the entire world. I'll let you guys duke it out in the comments, but if you ever want to be the most annoying person in the world, next time you hear somebody claim that Mount Everest is the tallest mountain in the world, make sure to confidently and rudely tell them, no, actually, Mount Everest has the tallest peak in the world, but Mauna Kea is the tallest base to tip. And in case that doesn't kill the mood at the party, well, then just tell them how much you hate pineapple on...
Yeah, I just stopped it as soon as the ad started. I think I should get a freaking award for that. No way I just did that. You know what? Cancel everything I was about to say. We're just gonna... Oh my god, and we get to skip it. That's beautiful. What?
Pizza, because those people are annoying too. The hot-headed hoax. One experience I had when I was younger that I think we all share is the experience of being a kid and not wanting to wear a coat. There was just so many times where...
Yeah, I was definitely that kid. Although I was also the kid wearing shorts in the wintertime, and I'd also have a big-ass hoodie on, and I'd have a coat over it because I would be freezing. I don't know.
It was cold out, but I didn't want to wear a coat. I had no logical explanation. I just didn't feel like wearing that restrictive device. But every single time, Mama Bro made me wear my coat.
Every time dude, look, I'll show you what I look like when I was wearing a coat. Look. That's literally me every time. It didn't matter if I was like 10 or 11, I would be walking in the school like that, and kids would be bullying me. So I was the short and hoodie guy.
Coat I was apprehensive to wear. Sometimes it was hats and gloves. Which brings me to the myth at play. My mom used to tell me that you have to wear a hat when it's cold out because 80% of the heat from your body leaves through your head. And for that reason, you need to insulate it to ensure you are fully warm. And I know for a fact my mom wasn't the only person to say that. And if I was a betting man, I would say that your mom probably did too. But whether it was a family member or a loved one or a friend or even just a news article, the reality is this. Your head is not some elusive chimney that is dead set on lowering your body's core temperature. But before we use facts to completely debunk this myth, let's actually trace back the origins of it. And it's not that long ago. The most commonly accepted origin of this myth dates back to the 1970s in a US Army survival manual, where in that survival manual it claims that covering your head is a necessity in the cold because, quote, 40 to 45% of body heat is lost from the head. And while you think a US Army survival manual,
That's a lot. 45% of your heat is produced from the head, dude.
would be a
That is a lot.
relatively reputable source for this
Because I'd be sweating. I don't know if you've ever laid in a bed next to me, but I'd be sweating, dog.
sort of information, this is one thing they got wrong. But at this point, you might be asking yourself, where did they even get this number or this theory? How did they come up with 40 to 45% of your body heat being lost through your head? And well, those roots date back to the 1950s, where the US military was doing tests on volunteers dressed in Arctic survival suits and were exposed.
Was this back when like they would lace up the people up on like LSD and shit? They would put them in a room, like give them LSD, let them all trip balls, and just see what happens. They were like guinea pigs to the government. That was
To
insane.
bitterly cold conditions. And the point of this test was to see where the body was losing most heat in these suits to better help optimize them. And during this flawed analysis, one thing that the scientists realized was that, most of the body heat in these volunteers is being lost through their head. But as you can see, these Arctic survival suits do not include hats, meaning that logically the head would lose the most heat, not because it is some crazy part of the body, it's just the fact that the head was not covered. And scientists who went back to analyze this data have even been recorded to say, quote, if the experiment had been performed with people only wearing
You. Just you.
Yeah.
Building your app.
Still never gonna buy premium. You can see that in every stream. If you go back to the odds, bro, I say that every time. It just won't happen.
lost no more than 10% of the heat through their heads. And it's almost hard to believe that such a simple seeming logical fallacy would exist in such a professional place, a literal military survival test. But I suppose this one was overlooked because, yeah, if your entire body is insulated and only your head is exposed to the elements, your head definitely will lose the most amount of heat. Not because your head is vulnerable, but because the head was the only part that was literally exposed to the elements. So here's the facts. While it may seem logical that your head may be more vulnerable because of the lack of fat and the abundance of blood vessels, the reality is that heat escapes from all parts of the human body at a similar rate per square inch. And while in your own personal experience, it may seem like your head is the primary source of your heat loss in cold weather, as we saw in the military test, it's not necessarily because your head is extra vulnerable, it's because typically your head is the least insulated with clothing. So yeah, is it a good idea to wear a hat or a toque on a cold day? Definitely. But is it because your head loses much more heat than the rest of your body? No, your head is just more vulnerable because most people aren't wearing toques all the time. And even if you are wearing a toque, it's very unlikely that you're insulating your head like you're
Yo, no lie. I cannot wait for him to get off of this topic.
insulating your chest, because you could put on a coat and insulate your entire torso. But unless you're wearing a balaclava and ski goggles, your head is always going to be less insulated. Not biologically, but by choice. The cold conundrum. Okay, since we're already on the topic of cold weather and stuff your mom told you, I figured this would be the perfect follow-up. And the follow-up in question is the interesting fact that you can get sick from being exposed to the cold. Logically, it makes sense. It's called a cold.
Yeah, imagine going outside. You got wet hair on, no socks. You're not going to get sick? You're telling me right now that my mom's been lying this whole time. I doubt it, bro.
You get it from being cold. What else is there to question? That is logical fact. But what if I was to be so bold to suggest that it wasn't the cold weather that was directly causing flu season to affect people? And I know it may sound blasphemous to your grandmother, but going outside without a hat or with wet hair isn't going to cause you to catch pneumonia. So what's
Okay, so exactly what I said. It was debunked instantly. That was insane.
the real scoop? Well, for starters, it's proven that you can't get an infectious or viral disease simply from being exposed to cold temperatures. However, you can get hypothermia, but that's different. So why do seemingly so many people catch colds or the flu as soon as the seasons start to change? There has to be something to it. And the fact of the matter is, there is something to it, but it's a lot more than meets the eye. You see, just because you don't develop a flu upon first contact with a cool breeze, doesn't mean that there's not factors at play that cause the typical flu season. And while temperatures getting cooler may be the most obvious and seemingly guilty culprit, it's really one of the least. And some of the more unlikely culprits are the following. Firstly, reduced vitamin D levels, because as winter approaches, people are spending less time outside, the sun is seen less in most parts of the world, and as a result, your vitamin...
But why are people low-key spending less time outside? Is it because we got everything that we need inside? Or is it because that everything you do outside is literally targeted and watched? If it's not a flock camera watching you, bro, you got some bony-ass Karen just eyeing you. And kids can't even go on a bike ride anymore without getting kidnapped. Like, there's such a world problem here. And I'm sure it's not D3 nature-made vitamins that's gonna fix it.
D levels are below what they should be. On top of this, during cooler months, overall air humidity is lowered, and it has been proven that lower humidity can increase your risk of rhinoviruses. And thirdly, rhinoviruses are typically spread through direct person-to-person contact, or by inhaling small droplets in the air, which is gross. But these things can only take place when you're coming in contact with people, typically in an enclosed environment. And during colder months, we typically spend more time inside, meaning that there's more risk of exposure. And when you combine all three of these factors all happening at the same time, it's not really hard to understand how more people could be more susceptible to diseases at a certain time of year, regardless of the outside temperature. So to settle the debate once and for all, does direct cold exposure cause you to get sick? No. But does every aspect of winter covertly try to get you sick? I would say yes. Meaning that just because you're safe from a cold breeze doesn't mean you're safe from a cold. Bubblegum bewilderment. Okay, admittedly, this entry is a bit less serious, but I think it's definitely the most universal, and call it a playground fact if you will, because I believe that almost everybody watching this video either believed or at least heard of this next fact, which is that if you swallow chewing gum, it will stay in your stomach for 7 years. Or
not only 7 years, but on the 7th year. Actually, I forgot what happens.
Or, you know, some variation of that. And if you've ever heard this, well, I'm about to give you the full scoop. And if you still believe this, well, I'm about to blow your mind. Obviously, because I'm talking about this in this
Don't you mean blow a bubble?
video, the gum does not stay in your body for 7 years. It actually stays in your digestive system for over 20 years. That is a joke. It does not at all. You see, it is true that gum is indigestible. Your body can simply not break it down and process it. But that does not mean that your body can't pass it through. And believe it or not, you probably eat a lot of things that your body can simply not digest. And if you don't believe me, well, two popular examples are corn and sunflower seeds. And don't even get me started on indigestible fibers. Keep in mind, your body is resilient. And just imagine all of the stuff that our ancient stomachs had to deal with. And just think about all the things your body had to deal with when you were a kid. You know, swallowing Lego and eating Polly Pocket pieces. Or possibly even shoving those light bright things up your nose. Regardless, your body in one way or another is able to deal with pretty interesting situations. It is for that reason that gum in your digestive tract, at least on rare occasions, is not a concern. But it does in fact differ from standard digestion. Let me explain. In the context of normal food items, there is a 3-step process that every food must go through before it can be digested. First, your food must be, of course, chewed. In this chewing process,
and then swallowed. And then what's the third one before digested?
Not only
broken down, chewed, swallowed, and then does it hit at the acid and then digest?
it breaks down food, but
What's the third one?
it also increases its surface area, which is directly beneficial for the next step of the process, which is actually executed by your saliva. Your saliva covers these small pieces of food, and with its now increased surface area, your saliva's enzymes are able to break it down even further. And once the food is properly chewed and salivated, it is then sent to your stomach for the final stage of processing, where your stomach acid turns all of your
The acid. It is always acid, brother.
food into a smooth mush that your digestive tract can easily pass through and absorb nutrients out of.
You think this is fundraising?
It's like the more I pause, the more I have to talk, the more it just wants to do that, and I will never pay for premium. I'm sorry. It took 4 seconds.
For most foods, gum does not play by these rules at all. For starters, you can chew gum all day long, and the breakdown it's going to experience is minimal. And the vast majority of people will spit out their gum before it'll ever begin to break down into smaller pieces. But even if you did intentionally chew your gum into smaller pieces, it's not going to affect what happens in the next 2 stages. You see, chewing gum is made out of both natural and synthetic polymers. And it's for this reason that the gum cannot be broken down by either your saliva or your stomach acid. And that's honestly a good thing, because if your body was able to break down the polymers for your digestive tract to absorb it, you would get very sick. So be grateful it's kind of immune to those processes. But regardless, now that you have intact gum, not only in your stomach, but now in your digestive tract, what happens? Well, like any other food product, it'll slowly make its way through your digestive system, potentially getting caught up on the way, but eventually getting its way out, typically in 1 to 2 days. Although gum can be sticky, your body is designed to get rid of even the most stubborn of foods, and that includes chewing gum. But I will say this, even though chewing gum won't stay in your stomach for 7 years like you might have thought on the playground, it's not recommended that you start swallowing swallowing it in mass. And that's because if you do swallow enough chewing gum, you can develop something that's known as a bezoar, which is just essentially a blockage in your digestive tract, which can be painful, dangerous, and even deadly if left untreated. So no, chewing gum does
Oh God. Oh my God. Could you imagine that? The blockage that you're building up there with bubblegum? Oh.
not stay in your body for numerous years. Although, it's not recommended you try it for yourself. The chameleon con. I'm about to take you on an emotional roller coaster, but spoiler alert, it has a happy ending, so buckle up. We all
Don't tell me they can't actually camouflage. If he's about to pull out some shit like, oh, they just turn how there's just emotional mood rings. They just turn how they feel. If they're mad, they turn more of a reddish color. Don't piss me off, bro. You've never watched Ringo? What is it called? Come on, I know you know what I'm talking about.
know that chameleons can change color. That is their claim to fame, and I am not going to take that from them. That is an undisputed fact. But the thing that I will dispute is the fact that they do this for camouflage purposes. And almost every cartoon and
Rango, baby. Oh my God, I know you've seen Rango, bro. Don't lie.
TV chameleon we see, they are specifically changing their colors to blend into a specific environment. And while this is a neat party trick and a logical survival instinct, this is actually not what's going on in most cases. But before I describe exactly why chameleons actually change color, I want to describe exactly how they change color, because this process is amazing. You see, in the skin of a chameleon, it has what is known as pigment cells. Pigment cells aren't necessarily rare in the animal kingdom, and there are certain animals that can even control them, such as squids and cuttlefish. Those animals actually have small muscles that can expand or contract these pigment cells to change their color. However, that's not how the chameleon changes its colors. It has these pigment cells, but it can't control them. Now, interestingly, between these pigment cells, chameleons have separate cells that have darker melanin pigment, and these cells specifically can be controlled by the chameleon. And how this works is really quite astonishing. These melanin pigment cells basically expand or contract across the surface of the skin to either darken or lighten the skin of the chameleon. And this works completely separately from the default pigment cells that are already on the skin. Chameleons aren't the only animal that do this process either. There's a fish known as the tilapia fish that also has this same method of color changing. And you can see
I know a girl who we used to call tilapia fish, but her pigment was fine, didn't change color.
on this close-up video exactly how it works in real time, and it is so crazy. Seeing it side by side on a visual level and on a cellular level is so interesting. But we're still not done yet, because on top of the pigment cells that already exist and the melanin pigment cells that the chameleon can control, the chameleon also has tiny crystals in its skin that reflect light. And by seemingly some miracle, the chameleons can control exactly how far these crystals are from each other within its own skin. And the distance that these crystals are from each other directly determine the type of light that is reflected off the chameleon's skin. And now that we know the three primary tools in a chameleon's tool belt when it comes to changing color, how does this look in real time? Because I think most of us have a falsified idea of how this even looks. Here's a side-by-side video of a fake chameleon change and a real chameleon change. As you can see, the real is a little bit slower and a lot less dramatic, but
still insane. Like, you're genuinely dogging on something so crazy, bro. Like, that's not just like every day everybody can do that, bro.
Still
and this guy's just like, here's the real and here's the fake. I don't really see a difference.
Amazing nonetheless. But to go back to the original point of this section, if back to the original is a little bit slower and a lot less, have a falsified idea of how this even looks. Here's a side-by-side video of a fake chameleon change and a real chameleon change. As you can see, the real is a little bit slower and a lot less dramatic, but still amazing nonetheless.
The fake one didn't even move.
But to go back to the original point of this section, if chameleons don't change their color for camouflage, why do they change their color at all? And sometimes fact is stranger than fiction, because chameleons are basically nature's mood ring. And scientists are pretty certain that in most cases, the only reason that chameleons are changing color are to better express their emotions to potential mates.
Cause they're mood rings. I know that's exactly the area he was going with this, bro. They always say that shit. I really just feel like they're badass, bro.
Or to potential predators. And scientists even have their own theories on what each color means, which I'll go through right now. It's believed that when chameleons are extremely bright and colorful, they are at their most excited. And this could mean excited about a potential fight or excited about a potential mating session. I said mating session. When chameleons are typically darker, it's believed they are feeling more
Do they mate through their tongue, bro? What? How did I not know that? What the fuck?
Submissive or relaxed for a less sensual word. But yeah, chameleons are cool, cute, cuddly. Some of them even have horns, but what you've been told about them is a lie. And it's believed that in the vast majority of cases, Chameleons don't change color to blend in, they're changing color to better express themselves, which I think is an even cooler reality than what's portrayed in movies. But that's just my opinion. The subscriber scam. I think that one common fact.
We're missionaries.
Brother.
We help people carry their burdens physically and spiritually. Tap the link below.
Shut up. I ain't tapping shit. I ain't tapping shit. Nah, it's these ads that really just piss me off. You feel me? Ooh.
Your video, they're probably subscribed to you. But I'm here to tell you the fortune cookie falsehood. Growing up, getting Chinese food was a special occasion, and it was truly one of my favorite special meals.
No, because real fact, I'm sitting there, I'm playing Rainbow Six Siege, and I order Panda Express through DoorDash, right? Panda Express, and I finally get it. It's at my door. The guy knocks. I go get my food. The first thing I do is crack open that fortune cookie. And why I'm playing R6 is important is because I'm on the headset with my buddy, Bibsy is what his name on Xbox is, and then I'm on the Xbox party with his friend Day, and so we're sitting there, and I crack open my fortune cookie and it say, take a gamble and you will win. I swear to God, for the freaking on everything I love, I go across the street, I get a scratch off ticket, scratch that bitch, $50. Winner.
And out of the entire seemingly endless spread that we would order from these Chinese food places, my favorite part of the meal was always the fortune cookie.
It was a $5 ticket. That was a dub.
Obviously a staple in Chinese cuisine and a long-lasting tradition in Chinese culture, right? The fortune cookie, always served in Chinese restaurants, has to be Chinese. It would make no sense any other way, right? And while I agree with that hypothesis, I'm sorry to tell you, but that is not the truth. The fortune cookies that you and I get in modern-day Chinese food have almost nothing to do with China whatsoever. And ironically, when the whole fortune cookie craze
no shit
took over the Western world, companies tried selling fortune cookies in China, marketing them as a American treat, but they were taken off shelves because nobody was interested in them. And I genuinely don't think you can get more ironic than that. But if the paper in cookie tradition doesn't come from China and the cookie doesn't come from China, then who came up with these crazy cookies and why do they sell them at Chinese food spots? Well, I'm gonna answer both of those questions. But to be totally transparent, there is no definitive historical source of Chinese fortune cookies. All we have is some more modern accounts and some historical speculation, with the most proven and accepted theory being that Chinese fortune cookies actually originate in Japan. One of the only historical records of modern-day Chinese fortune cookies exist in illustrations from 19th century Japan, and these illustrations show a treat known as Sujiura Senbei. But these illustrations aren't just a relic from the past, because to this day, you can buy
those look so much better than the fortune cookies we have today.
This treat handmade.
They just look like and taste like styrofoam today, bro. Oh my God.
On the streets of Kyoto. And how they make it is the following. Bakers will use iron molds, will grill the dough to a medium firm consistency, and then they will fold this dough into something they call small waffles. And it's during this folding process where they will insert a piece of paper with the fortune and give it its classic curved shape. But admittedly, this Japanese version and the Western version you and I are likely used to eating are not the same. With Sujiura Senbei, for example, they are larger, darker, and savory. Whereas in the American version, they are sweeter, smaller, and lighter in texture because they are using butter instead of miso in the baking process. But
it's styrofoam. It's that shit that says, can't believe it's not butter shit.
While that is interesting and insightful, it still doesn't answer the question, how did this get into Chinese restaurants in America? And well, the answer is immigration and adaptability. During the 1910s, a lot of Japanese immigrants were landing in California. And with them, they brought their culture, specifically Sujiura Senbei. And while that logically explains why these fortune cookies are in America, why are they in Chinese restaurants? And while this isn't definitively proven, the most commonly accepted answer as of now is a result of Asian fusion food restaurants and America's early on disdain for Japanese food. And what I mean by this is, in the 1910s, a lot of Japanese immigrants were struggling to open authentic Japanese restaurants, specifically because Americans were not too fond of eating raw fish. And because of this, these Japanese entrepreneurs decided that their best—
But a California roll? Oh my God, to die for. A spicy California roll?
Next step
was some wasabi? Holy shit.
Were to create Chinese food restaurants, tailoring the dishes to the American palate, specifically giving a sweet treat at the end of a meal. Hence why the American fortune cookie is sweet and the Japanese version is, well, not. I saved this entry for the end of the video because technically it's not fact. There is a lot of working theories about all of the specific origins, and there is not one definitive historical account start to finish of the entire history of fortune cookies. However, what I've told you today is most commonly the accepted version of events. However, you could argue it's not fully known. And well, that's accurate. But I honestly just think the entire history of fortune cookies is just so interesting because it was a Japanese tradition that was brought to America, was extremely popular in America, was brought to China, and failed in China, which is, I don't know, ironic and worth mentioning. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to conclude our second video about totally wrong fact.
Yeah, definitely not concluding your videos again, brother. Your videos are lame. W video, W stream. I'm going to edit this shit and put it up on YouTube.